I'm making another video on car audio today because I got some questions from my previous video on installing door speakers. The video was about installing the subwoofer in my wife's 2008 Kia Spectra. Now, I don't want to make this too vehicle specific, but I am working on my 2004 Nissan Xterra today. But a lot of the techniques here can be reused and adapted to pretty much any vehicle. Two things that end up coming up with installing aftermarket speakers is one, actual screwing it and bolting it to the sheet metal. So you can buy some cheap aftermarket like plastic rings and stuff, but usually you can reuse the stock speaker. And I use this method on the Xterra and also on my wife's Kia Spectra here. But you can reuse that and make your own adapting plate out of it. The second thing is the actual connection of the wiring. I don't like cutting wire harness and connectors off of the vehicle side wire harness. So again, I reuse the stock speaker, cut the connector off, and make a little pigtail jumper. So I don't want to get into too much detail, but most door panels are all the same. We're going to have to remove this plastic panel to be able to get to the speaker. So pretty much all door panels are going to have some type of screw right around the latch that opens the car door. You're going to have a trim ring that will pop off somehow. Usually it slides forward or it slides backwards, and it's got little hooks that interface and lock into it. Those usually pop out pretty easily. Next thing is wherever the handle is to shut the door, you're going to have some screws in that area. So in this case, I got one inside the little cup area. There might be one on each side underneath this trim, but this trim will just pry up. You can unplug the wire harness where the windows and door locks are. And like this piece of trim will pop up. There might be a screw under there, I don't know yet. There's always, most of the time, a panel right behind the side view mirror. So just pop out any clips and then just scan around and look for any screws that may be on the sides of the door panel.
Once you have your door panel removed, go ahead and remove your stock speaker. The stock Xterra speaker is on the left, and you can see it's got 3 mounting bolts as opposed to 4 main mounting bolts on the Rockford Fosgate. I use these same speakers on the 2008 Kia Spectra as well. Next, you want to take a razor blade and cut around the outside of the cone and expose what's underneath. You can see 2 tabs with some wires on it, and that's going to be the main connection that goes into the connector that interfaces with the vehicle wire harness. Take some needle nose pliers and just grab the ribs and start snapping them out because you want to remove all the plastic in the middle. You can take a Dremel or a sanding drum to clean up the inside. Next, you can see the backside of the Rockford Fosgate speaker, and it's got some speaker wire attached to it. This speaker wire came with that speaker kit. Now you need to connect the other side of the speaker wire to these metal tabs, and this allows you to use the vehicle wire harness with no modification. I cut off the leg of the L to make a flat tab, and that works perfect for a female spade connector that I crimped onto the other end of the speaker wire. Before finalizing your connection, you need to make sure that you have the right polarity. Your new speaker will be labeled with positive and negative, but you need to consult a service manual so you can get the correct wire colors for positive and negative on your wire harness. Then you need to verify the orientation of the connector to make sure that you know which metal tab is getting the positive and negative signal. Once you have that information, you just need to connect the positive terminal on the speaker to the tab that gets the positive signal from the wire harness, and then repeat for the negative signal. The last step here is to attach your new speaker to the plastic ring. I used a sheet metal screw with a coarse thread to grip through the plastic and a wide flange to hold the speaker down. This gives you a perfect plug-and-play speaker where you can use the existing connections on the wire harness and the existing hardware to mount it through the door. It also spaces the speaker out of the door enough so that the window doesn't hit the magnet when it rolls down.
So here's my Rockford Fosgate 6x9, right? So the bolt pattern should be the same. The problem that we're going to run into here, as I found out because I've already done one side, is that the actual angle of the frame on the back side is different. So it actually doesn't even sit all the way into the hole because the edges of the sheet metal here start hitting on this part. Now, there's 2 ways you can fix this. Is one, you can space the speaker out of the cavity a little bit so that it doesn't sit so deep. That'll also help out with clearance on the back side. Or you can start trimming the sheet metal here. But if you look at the sheet metal, there is a rolled edge here, a little curved edge, and that's to add rigidity because you do have a pretty heavy mass that's going to be vibrating back and forth. So I'm going to go for the spacer method. Alright, so here's that 6x9 that I took out. I'm just going to take a razor blade. I'm just going to go around the outer edge here on the edge of that speaker cone. Alright, so that speaker cone is out, and now you can see right where these 2 wires came off of that wire harness connector. So there's no real magic to this. I'm just going to start with some wire snips. I'm going to start bending this metal bracket that it's on and just try and cut it out of here. It's thin metal. You can usually get it free with a few snips of some pliers and twist it around, do whatever you got to do. There you go. So there's the connector, 2 wires that are soldered onto these tabs. Now you just got to attach it to the existing speaker wire that came with your new speakers. Alright, so I got my new speaker and it came with speaker wire. So you can see there's a red and a black speaker here, and they have tabs on here that'll slide right on there. The connectors on the end of the speaker wire. So we're going to go ahead and just slide it on. And for the speaker wire that came with the speakers, there's a solid black wire which goes to the black or the negative side, and then there's a black and white striped wire, and that'll go to the red side. But the question is does the connector need to go this way, or does it need to go that way, or which way does it need to go? So for that, we're going to have to look in the rear of the vehicle and look at the wires. So in this particular application, the wires here are an orange and a black and pink. So the orange is going to be the positive, the black and pink is going to be the negative, and I've already looked that up to verify. Right, so you got to figure out which pin goes to which wire, and then you have to orient the connector and verify that you make sure you get the positive to positive and negative to negative. So I'll show you how to do that in just a minute with using a digital multimeter. So I've got my digital multimeter here, and I'm putting it on resistance because I want to measure continuity between 2 points. So I say, okay, I'm just going to pick one of the strands of wire and hold the black or the red, it doesn't really matter. And right now, the multimeter is showing a 1. And that means it's an open circuit, they're not touching anything yet. So I'm just going to pick a pin and touch it. And now that's saying about 0.8, 0.7. So that means that those have some sort of continuity between them. There is some resistance there. And if I choose the other pin, it should stay at 1, meaning that that pin and this wire are not touching. So now that I figured out which pin goes to this wire, I need to look at the connector, commit that to memory, and then go ahead and line that up with the wire harness and say, all right, looking at it this way, it's the left goes to this wire, and line it up, and that means that pin goes to the orange inside the wire harness. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and grab my wire strippers, and I'm going to strip the ends of the speaker wire that I'm using. And for this speaker wire, it's very thin, high gauge wire, very thin. So I'm going to strip off quite a bit of the insulation, so that way I can double it over a couple times to thicken the wire up, because I'm going to be using these crimp-on barrel connectors. So I'm actually going to double this over twice, so it's basically 4 strands thick. Make sure that I get a good grip on it when I crimp it in, but I'm just going to slide that connector in. Use the ends of my wire strippers here, and just crimp it down nice and tight without cutting through that plastic, and give it a couple pulls to make sure it's tight on there, and that end should be good to go. Now I'm just going to repeat and make sure that the one that I found out is positive. Make sure that goes to the right wire here, and then I'll have a plug and play type connection. Alright, so I crimped that connector on. I got a nice tight connection, and I'll take some electrical tape and just tape it up. The other thing too is these 2 wires coming off the plastic connector are bare copper, which means that you're going to lose your speaker signal if they short out together, and that's not a good thing. So I will take some protective conduit, some wire loom, like this plastic tubing right here, and I will just run that over the whole length and wrap it in electrical tape so that it can't touch. But basically now you have the connector that'll plug directly into your wire harness, and it adapts straight to the new speaker. So now you're ready to install it. But we still have that problem with the slope and the curvature of the back side of the frame. So we're going to have to get some spacers and find something that can space it out. Well, you know, the other problem that I ran into here is that looking at the screw that came on the stock speakers, you can see it's a hex head, and it's a coarse thread sheet metal screw. But where the notches are cut on the new speaker, that head is too big and it doesn't slide in there very much. You can kind of get it into the notch, but the problem is that with this, you don't have a screwdriver head, you have to put a wrench on it. So I'm going to have to get new screws. So I got these same threaded sheet metal screws, just the local Home Depot here. It's a Phillips head, so that way you don't need to have a wrench all the way around it. And in the specialty hardware section, I got these little nylon spacers. They're a 1/4 inch thick. And so I'm thinking that I should be able to pretty easily use these spacers on the back side of the speakers to space it out of the cavity a little bit. Alright, so I went ahead and finished taping up all of these connectors, and I put some wire loom on it so every bit of the wiring is protected in either tape or the plastic sheeting here. And I've already gotten a couple of screws started, but I'm just going to take the nylon spacer and I'm just going to slide it behind the speaker, trying not to drop it. And take the new screw that I have that's a little bit longer to account for that, and catch that spacer, and just try and get all 4 of them started here. Alright, so all 4 of those screws are snugged up nice and tight. Just reach behind, check the magnet, and there's space between the sheet metal out there. And I will take a zip tie and just all this extra wiring that I have, and again all the extra wiring is on the speaker side, so the vehicle wiring has not changed. But I'm just going to zip tie it to the existing wire harness and just keep it out of the way, just to clean it up a little bit. And we'll go ahead and check and put some music on and make sure that this is playing properly. Now the other thing to keep in mind here is that you've spaced the speaker outward some. So that gives you clearance on the back side, but you do want to double check this rear panel and see if there's anything it could be hitting on. So this rear panel and the grill right here is pretty flat, so I don't think we'll have a problem. Sometimes there's larger plastic ribs, you might have to snip them off a little bit. So let's go ahead and put some music on and see what it sounds like.
Go, 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 shorty. It's your birthday. We gon' party like it's your birthday. We gon' sip a card.